these questions that the entire family has sent in for you to answer.
Well, it's my privilege.
Today is April 1st, 2020. So let's just start with some easy questions. What's your full name?
Betty Jane Palmer.
Awesome. And where were you born?
Las Vegas, New Mexico, on September 1st, 1925.
Okay, and then how many other places have you lived in your lifetime?
I've had 26 addresses in 5 different states.
Woo! Okay, and how old are you now?
I'm 94.
So, what is your favorite color?
Turquoise.
What is your favorite animal?
Oh, my favorite animal is the bear, which I collected many over the years.
Also, what's your favorite sport?
Favorite sport for me to do is bowling. And I did that for over 20 years, and we bowled in 2 leagues a week. And it was so much fun getting together with all your friends, and just a good, clean way to have fun.
What is your favorite store to shop at?
Sears, Roebuck and Company, when we weren't using the catalog for our outhouse back in Topeka. So we in those days we could go pick out any toys we wanted within reason, and that's what we got for Christmas. So when we weren't doing that, we just used it for toilet paper. Speaking of toilet paper, where's my Sears catalog?
Little Travis wants to know, what is your favorite snack?
Ice cream.
Heck yeah!
We all scream for ice cream.
I think that literally runs in our whole family. I want to know, what is your favorite alcoholic beverage? What's your go-to?
Bourbon and 7.
Nice.
And that was many, many, many moons ago.
And did you ever get into hardcore drugs or marijuana?
Just now I'm on opioids.
Took you a while, but now you're getting with the drugs.
That's for my chronic pain.
I'm going to start and go, before Mom gets too wasted on her opioids. No.
Kelly wants to know also, what is your favorite TV show, or what's the thing you like to watch the most on TV?
Just lately it's been reality shows. Because they're so weird and funny, and you just get hooked.
Totally. What are some that you watch?
Well, I'm watching one called Marriage at First Sight.
Great one.
You don't even see each other before you get married. And it's just hilarious.
It's great. And what about NASCAR? Is that still going on?
NASCAR has been my life for a lot of years, and now with the virus, they're having simulated races. And that helps, but
It's like watching a video game, kind of.
Yeah. Well, I was in a simulator.
Oh yeah, we did
and
that.
Carly was my right-hand man here, and I got off the track at 172 miles an hour, and I put my arm over to hold her.
Yeah, you were blocking. You're making
It
sure I
felt
was
so
gonna
real.
crash.
I couldn't let her get hurt. So that's
so
how
great.
they're doing it now till all this terrible virus is over.
What would you get if you had to get a tattoo?
Well, in the first place, I would never have to get one, and everybody else can, but that's just my personal thing. I wouldn't have one.
But if you had to, I'm gonna force this.
Well, don't tell me what to do.
As I'm sitting here with sleeves, everybody. Okay, what is your favorite food?
Fried chicken.
We have a follow-up question about chicken, so I'm going to go ahead and jump over there.
Okay.
That is from Jeff. He wants to know, how do you wring a chicken's neck and prepare it for eating?
Well, to wring the chicken's neck is all in your wrist. And then you have a bucket of scalding hot water. You dunk it in there, and then you pull out all the feathers. Then you take it into your kitchen and cut it up and have it in a bag with flour, salt and pepper, and put it in some lard or oil and fry those suckers right up.
I'm gonna stick with KFC, but we're gonna do more from the family. So that one's from Jeff. We're gonna jump to me. What was your favorite pets?
Lassie, our collie.
Okay, so Catherine wants to know what holiday is your favorite and why is it your favorite?
That's an easy one. That's Christmas. And that's a spiritual family time. And it's the most wonderful.
Love it.
And Jesus was born, you know, we got to celebrate it.
Your daughter, aka my mom, would like to know what kind of jobs have you had?
Well, when I was about 17, I started out at the Busy Bee Cleaners. And my biggest fond memory of that was Robert Alda, the movie star, used to come in and bring his clothes.
Oh, hey!
So the next one was the job at Ratner's drugstore with Mom. She was the cook and I was the waitress.
Cool.
And then when I did turn 18, I got a job at a place called Roscoe Manufacturing. And the war was on, World War II. And I stood at a lathe and made airplane parts. And then I was transferred to the inspection department, and I knew how to work my Commodore. It was, I was really something. But all the guys, any girls that came in to work, they respected us. They didn't tell their dirty jokes, and they didn't do all that man stuff. Just from there on, worked there for a long time. And my mother at the time worked at Bendix, and she was doing labor there.
Oh.
So we both stepped out for the war effort. After I married Carl and moved to Ohio, I got a job. Just walked right into this place. I didn't like Canton, Ohio whatsoever. I thought I got to get out and get a job. The first job I took was just serving Verner's ginger ale and hot dogs at this little place inside of a mall. And after that, we moved to Dayton, Ohio. Then I got a job at Bond's Clothing, working in the office. And after that, during that time is when my dad passed away. And I had to go back and take care of things. And then a favorite job was working in personnel for General Motors in the personnel office. Loved that job.
That was your favorite?
Very favorite job, ever. I'd probably still be there if I could. I loved it so much. But after I was 8 months along with Chris, then I went home and I became a stay-at-home mom, thankfully, until my youngest, Kathy, was in kindergarten. That was a long haul, and I just loved every second of that.
And then you became a nanny for the grandkids.
Taking care of my grandchildren was the favorite job.
Okay, but you said it was
General Motors,
you said it was GM, so which one is it though? What is your earliest memory? This is from Jamie.
I think it's before I started to school, and Bud and I were on the couch, and he was teasing me. And meantime, my mom's dog got out in the street. It was a bulldog that got hit by a car. So she was crying and upset, and we were arguing. So she came over and said, "Which one of you started this?" And I said, "He did." He said, "I did." So she spanked us both because she knew one of us was lying. And my mom was one of these that didn't spare the rod and spoil the child. So, but the funny thing, later in years, Bud came to me and said, "Remember when we both got a spanking for that?" He said, I would caused it.
Ooh, he remembered it.
But he was
felt guilty.
80 years old before he...
He came around. So we also want to know, who is the most memorable person you've ever met besides me?
Well, besides you, Carly, Christina, that would be Edwina McKenzie, and she came as a speaker to the Elks Lodge for our Deers Club. And she was known as the world's oldest Titanic survivor. We didn't know till later years that they really did find one more that was the oldest, but they never told her. But she sat next to me and gave me an autograph, and she was 92 years old at the time, and she lived to be 100.
Wow. And was she the one in the movie to drop the necklace into the ocean?
I don't know.
No.
So Jamie has another question. What is your best memory?
My marriage to Carl Ray Gilfie,
Ooh, aw.
that was very special. That was
Sweet.
my knight in shining armor.
Wow. Okay, we're all crying. Jamie also wants to know, what is your worst memory?
I have two, and one was when my father was killed. He was helping my stepdad in the rock quarry, trying to get a tractor started, and they had a rope between them. And then when the tractor started, my dad got off and went down and bent over to pull the rope off, but Russ didn't know it and backed over him. And so that was a horrible tragedy. And the next worst one was my divorce from Carl and leaving the house and having my family broken up.
Wow, well, those are definitely two very tragic events, and you were an extremely strong woman through it all. Honestly, one of the strongest people I've ever met in my whole life, like probably the strongest.
It's called Pioneer Stock.
If you could travel back in time to any period of life, when would that be? And that's from Jamie also.
That would be while Carl and I were raising our 4 children. It was the happiest time of my life. The funnest, just everything about it I'd want to do again. Just having my children was I just fell in love with all of them. You couldn't help it.
Well, little Katie, Catherine's daughter, she wants to know, to go with this, what was your favorite thing to do with your kids?
Well, we didn't have a lot of things. We had one large toy box that had every single thing in it for all the kids.
Wow.
And we played games, and we just laughed. We had fun, and then eventually just played outside the most of the time. Just going around the block with their friends, and later bicycle riding and all those things that you do outdoors. There's no computers, none of those things to keep you in the house. So that was easy,
Yes.
very easy.
Okay, and then so when you were a kid, what was a typical day like for you? This is what Leonard wants to know.
Well, my parents divorced when I was 10 years old, so I had to grow up pretty fast. But I had a lot of friends, and they'd come over and we'd draw a circle in the driveway and throw our marbles in there and shoot in with our boulders. And whoever shot theirs out got to take it and put it back in their bag. So that was a cheap thing to do. You went to Woolworth's 5 and 10 store and bought all your wonderful things you play with. We played jacks. Most people don't even know what that is.
I know because you have them at your house.
Yeah.
And that's a
I
fun
love
little
to
game.
play jacks. There's a lot of coordination to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really simple. It was very simple. But I had to start helping my dad with the housework. I had to learn to cook on a wood range, draw water from the well, the cistern, and wash clothes on the board. So it was hard, but what do I know? I was only 10, so, you know,
You
I
did
think
a lot.
I blocked out a lot of things, because I know I had to have cried myself to sleep for my mom every night. She moved away to another city after she married Russell. And I laugh about it because I say she ran away with the drummer that was in her band. And she was quite a gal. She played music for the dance halls and on the radio, and she was quite talented. And just fell for Russ, being her drummer. Say, well, adios, amigo. See you whenever.
And that must have been super hard.
Yeah, it was, but my dad was a saint. His name was Oscar, and he should have been given an Oscar.
Aw.
Now, to the teenage years,
Yeah.
that was much, much better. We moved to California, and my cousin and I, Margie, used to go down to the Long Beach Pike and ride the roller coasters after we danced all night. And
Cool.
fun. And then
That sounds awesome.
I met Vern at, I know this will be another question, but I met Vern during that time at the American Legion. And
How old were you?
I was about 17.
Okay.
And Margie and I were dancing together. The guys were all going to service. So all the women gathered and went out to the dances. And we were dancing what they called a schottisch and some of the old time dances. And I looked up and there's this cute blonde guy standing across the way. And he motioned to me like next dance. I'm like, how rude. So I just went over and sat down, and he came across the hall and said, he bowed and said, may I have the next dance? I said, yes, you may. And we danced all night.
He's a gentleman, a fine gentleman.
Yeah, he was.
Wow.
So that was the beginning of something good.
That's 20 times more romantic than what's going on in anybody's lives.
Yeah.
That's very, very romantic. So Jamie wants you to describe your kids with one word each. That's a hard one.
Just one word each would be Chris. Glue. And she's glue because she keeps all the families together, all the in-laws and outlaws and everybody. She doesn't leave out anybody, and that's remarkable. Okay, Deborah would be B-double-E, and that's the biblical term for Deborah. And she's busy as a bee. She had her own knitting business, and she could still be just cooking and doing every single thing that possible.
Doug.
Doug, he's funny. He's the humorous guy of the bunch. Quick wit, comes up with stuff just immediately, and we admire that because we all like to laugh.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have Kathy, and she is caring, and the reason she is mostly, she always wants somebody to be situated.
Situated, yeah. Well, I definitely get to reap the benefits of that one, for sure.
Well, we all do. We all do.
Well, so Janine wants to know, you can't pick a favorite kid, but who is your favorite daughter-in-law?
I think I have to give that some thought. Let's see, I only have one son. Oh, I must be Janine.
It narrows it down. It does. So Mike wants to know, what was the most wild thing you've ever done?
Well, I believe the most wild thing was dancing at your wedding.
Jeff has a question. Is there anything you regret never asking your parents?
Yes, I do have a regret. After my mother divorced and left us and all, I never understood it, but I was only 10. I never went to her later years and said, what happened? Why would that happen? All she ever offered to me was, well, I made a mistake. And that wasn't enough, but I wouldn't ask any more questions, so I regret that.
Jeff also wants to know, in what ways is Jeff similar to you?
Well, none of us are perfect, but I think that you and I are a lot alike because we're easygoing.
That's a good one.
And
That's very true.
I think that's important.
Okay, so then how is Jeff like Grandpa Carl?
He's got the quick wit, just like his Grandpa Carl, and just like Doug. The three of them are three peas in a pod when it comes to wit. And I'm just the nitwit.
Okay, so Debbie has kind of a situational one. If there was a fire and you can only rescue one item, non-living, what would it be?
That definitely my photo albums. And I have about 26 of them. So you know how much I love
You've
my
been taking a couple
pictures.
trips back in the Burton house, sounds like. So Debbie and Jake both had this question. Where was the best place that you've ever traveled to?
Well, I think the very first place I went was Hawaii, Kailua. It was a quiet village, and it was so restful. And the best part is we had Bossa to take us everywhere because he lived there, grew up there. And then for Jake, the Panama Canal, went through there with our cruise ship through the locks, and all the mechanics of it and everything. Of course, Jake would probably know more about it than I do, because I'm not mechanical. But it was just interesting, very, very interesting.
Sweet. In your youth, what do you think your greatest adventure was? This is from Jim.
Well, Jim, I'm not very adventurous, but I'll tell you about a hiking trip that we took up to Mount Timpanogos in Utah, and we went into a cave. And that was very adventurous for me because I was claustrophobic from my brother sitting on a cave door, not letting me out when I was probably about 9 years old.
That's like torture.
And once we got in that cave up there, they shut out all the lights and let you know how total darkness is. And that was very adventurous for me.
Okay, now we're going to get into some, little romantic questions over here.
Ooh.
So, who was your first kiss?
It was Tommy West, and I was about probably eight years old. And he was one of my good friends. There were three of us, Tommy West, my cousin Donald, and me. We were the Three Musketeers. And went every place together like we could at that age. But, I was really sweet on little Tommy West.
So did he come up to you and just kiss you?
I think it was a mutual thing.
Oh, you guys just kind of came
Yeah.
together as 8-year-olds, like a movie, like a romantic comedy. You guys just, wow. That was from me, by the way. That was my question.
Okay.
And then Kelly, my sister, wants to know, who is your first love?
My first love was Vern Palmer because I hadn't met Carl yet.
Chris wants to know, how did you meet Vern, which I know we already went over, but also how did you meet Carl?
We worked at the same place. It's called Hydro Air. And he was kind of like a straw boss on a circular line that we had. As it went by, we had to use a power tool and do some work on something passing by. And eventually he moved me over to more of an inspector. And I had my own little desk, and he'd come over and put a space heater next to my feet so I'd be warm. And I thought, ooh, god dang, he's cute. So he looked at my hand, and I had an engagement ring on. And he said, our country club's fair is coming up for our work here. Would you like to go with me? But he said, you don't have another ring on there to match that engagement ring.
Ooh.
So smooth.
Yeah,
smooth
real
operator.
smooth.
I said, I'm going, but I won't go with you. I went with a couple that worked there, an older couple. But when I walked into that place and I heard music and people singing, I looked across the room, and there he was sitting at the piano playing music for everybody, and they were singing their lungs out. I'm like, oh my God, look at him. Woohoo! I don't know. I don't know when that other ring's coming on.
Ooh, it was the beginning of something
So it was,
real hot.
We kept it cool.
Okay.
I didn't go out with him or do anything until I broke up with Vern. And that was one of the hardest things in my life.
So Megan has a couple questions. Her first one is, what is Carl's best traits?
He had too numerous to mention. There was not one thing wrong with that man as far as I was concerned until it came to something called a bottle. And the bottle got him down. The bottle got us all down. It was the saddest thing ever because he was a wonderful, wonderful man.
Musical, funny.
Everything. He did it all.
Yeah. What is the best decade that you remember? This is also from Megan.
I'm going right back to the decade of raising our children. Carl and I together, we had lots of fun doing it.
So all this talk about your love life, Jeff wants to know, what's the secret to a long relationship, long marriage?
Well, that would be communication. And, you know, the guy has to say a lot of yes, dear. But just talk things over and respect each other.
Great. So Doug wants to know, what is the most memorable historic event that you've lived through?
Well, that would be World War II, when all the guys were going to service and some of them were coming back. I was a pen pal with a lot of them that I knew from school. And we had rations, and one ration was tires. And Vern came over one day to pick me up and go someplace. And my dad looked at his tires and said, you're not taking my daughter out in that car. You got 2 bald tires. And he says, I have ration tickets, so I'll give them to you.
Oh, that's sweet.
So after he got his new tires, I got to go on a date.
So Jeff and James have the same question. They want to know, what's your secret to a long life?
I never smoke, drink, or chew, or associate with those who do.
Got a saying for it and everything. Even though you did have a lot of secondhand smoke in your
Yes,
life,
I
did
did.
you? So Melanie, our good friend Melanie, wants to know, what's the secret to being able to forgive?
Well, that's Melanie, my adopted daughter. And I appreciate that she introduced Chris and Leonard. Because look what that turned out to be. Mm-hmm. That was fantastic.
That was a good matchmaker right there.
But as far as forgiving, first thing is, you can't do anything about it. It's already been done. So you just have to get away from that grudge that you're carrying inside of you. Because the other person doesn't even know how you feel. You can't change it, so why go with it? So all of a sudden, you feel more free.
Wow.
So I think that's what's called forgiveness.
David. Okay, well, thank you so much for answering all of our questions. I so appreciate it, and everybody in the family does. My mom's actually going to take over now because I asked everyone to send me a question, and she sent me a very long question, which is basically she wants you to describe each decade and the highlights of it. So I'm going to go ahead and let her take the reins here.
Well, thank you. Thank you for asking me to do this. I feel very honored that anybody would want to know.
Okay, well, thanks again, Carly, for this great idea to videotape Mom and ask all the questions from the family. You've had a remarkable life. It has been a long life. It's had a lot of tragedy, but it's had a lot of joy. And you are the matriarch of our family. You're the rock. You're the pioneer stock. You're the one that keeps us all together. You're ultimately the glue.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, when you think back to under 10, is that when you were playing the marbles and the jacks and playing outside and doing all that? Was
Yeah,
that a
and
good childhood?
then I moved from New Mexico to Kansas during that time. So it would be after 10 that I would be doing all that stuff.
All that other stuff. But you remember 0 to 10 being joyful time, or from what you can recall?
Yeah, good enough,
Okay.
First
Just a little
4
kid.
years, you're nothing
Yeah.
anyway. So.
Okay. Okay. When you were between the ages of 10 and 20, what were some of the things that stood out during that decade?
Well, when I turned 10 is when my parents divorced. And I had to go into all this housekeeping and helping my dad with cooking and laundry and all the things that a woman would do. And also take care of my little 5-year-old brother when my dad was at work.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up fast.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I got into my teenage years and we moved to California, that's when things picked up and started going to the dances with Margie, and my dad would take us and pick us up, and it was just a fun time.
Okay, then how about between age 20 and age 30? What were some of your highlights?
Well, that was marrying Carl when I was 21, and he was just turned 22, and we moved to Ohio and eventually to Utah, and that's where our family all started. And it started to be just happiness galore, and nothing could go wrong. Every day was sunny and bright, and there was always a bright light at the end of the tunnel. And another memory was my dad dying, actually being killed, and he was only 56 years old, which is way, way too young. And that was awful.
I think we talked before about 30 to 50. If you want to look at 20-year chunk of time with your kids and everybody, what was happening?
30 to 50 would be raising the children, going out to parks and having fun, and Doug's ball games that we attended, and we just always found something good to do. It was just plain fun, F-U-N.
So a lot transpired between your age of 30 to 50. So let's talk a little bit more about that. What were some of the things?
Well, it was the dreaded divorce with Carl, and moving away from my children, taking you with me, and finally marrying Vern. Well, we started going to the Palomino for dancing because Vern and I both loved to dance. And we married in 73. And it was just fun and games and going to the parks to see celebrities. And we were busy. We're busy just enjoying life, with taking you kids with us too to go to all the country stuff. It was very popular then.
So many great memories, I know, for all of us in the family during that time, with the trips to Tahoe and the parties, even earlier than that, the parties on Oso. And yeah, you were out every Friday and Saturday night that I can recall out dancing with Vern. So it sounds like also from age 50 up to age 60s, when you were doing a lot of that fun stuff at the Palomino and Ryan's Roundup and the parties out in the valley, and moved back and forth a couple times from Torrance back to the valley. Just a lot of great memories from that chapter, I know.
Also, between the 50th and 60th year of mine, my mother developed dementia and she passed away. And before that, I'd call her up and ask her if she'd had lunch. I'm going to take you to lunch. And she'd say, I don't know. So we go to lunch, and she said one day, was I ever married? And I said, yes, Mom. I'd like to tell you how many times. So it was about 4 times, but you were married to my dad twice. So, you had a pretty good married life.
Yeah.
And she'd say, okay, Mabel. I'd say, Mom, my name's not Mabel. I'm the only daughter you have, and my name's Betty. And she'd say, oh, you can't prove it by me. And we'd just laugh our heads off. It was funny. We had to laugh about it.
So why did Grandma marry Grandpa twice?
Well, after they went to court for the custody, my mother got custody of my brother Bud for 6 months, and then she had to turn him over to my dad for 6 months. Well, when that period came about, she said, ain't no way you're getting him. So she divorced the guy she'd already married for a short time and married my dad again. Thank God she did, because I was born.
Woohoo! Okay, so now 60 years old to 70. What had happened during that time?
Well, I'd already lost Carl from terrible cancer, and that was awful. And then Vern passed away. So now I have 2 wonderful grandkids to start babysitting. And started on from there, and it was just, gave me a lot of love, and it just made me have something to get up and do. Because I was all by myself. I never lived alone after you moved out, Kathy. I was 60 years old before I ever lived by myself. So that was a big adjustment. But having those 2 little babies got me through it.
And those babies were Catherine and Jeff.
Yes.
So besides watching Catherine and Jeff every day, what kind of time did you have with Jamie?
Well, they moved to Huntington Beach, and Jamie was 2 years old. So I didn't get in on the infant care. But she'd walk in my door and go straight to the pantry, and she'd find a can of chili, and she was just as tall as my breadboard, and I would be chopping onions, and she'd reach up and say, "Yan yan," and she'd grab an onion and eat it. And it was just so funny, and she did it every single time. And then I have Maggie coming over after junior high school at Cali Mayer, and we'd play games, and if we played the 3 pigs, I always had to be the wolf. But she loved to go out in the kitchen and cook. And she made some concoctions, and when Doug came to pick her up, he'd have to eat it. And he said it was delicious, no matter what.
So we know you met Vinnie Austin during this time too. So tell us about some of the adventures you had with
Well,
him.
the funny part about Vinnie was Doug already knew that family before I did, because he was best friends with his son Jeff.
Okay.
And then I met his wife Roberta. We all bowled in the bowling league together, happy as could be. And then I lost a spouse, he lost a spouse, and it took about 5 years after all that we kept meeting at the Elks to dance. He always asked me to dance. And then he got brave enough to say, "Well, I'll pick you up." And then pretty soon he got braver and said, "I have the money and I want to travel, but I do not want to travel alone." And I said, "Well, if you're asking me to travel, I have obligations all year long until the summer. So if you want to plan something for that, we will." And then it just broke loose into the most wonderful cruises and vacations I've ever had in my life. It was Aruba, Costa Rica, Hawaii, Alaska. It was just any place he could find on the map to go to. We had the historic Eastern trip to go to Annapolis, and Washington, D.C., went through there, and the Smithsonian Institute, and
down the
too much.
Mississippi on your steamboat.
First trip was down the Mississippi on the steamboat. And it was just so many, I can't even name them all.
What a great chapter, though, to have a great life with Dad and raising your kids, a great time with Vern and doing all the wonderful things you did with Vern, and then meeting this really best friend in Vinnie and being able to travel with him for so many years, 13 years, I think, of travel and fun. So how rich, that just seems so rich to me that you...
Yeah, it was something I never expected I'd ever be able to do in my life, because I never longed to travel. I never had that in my itinerary to say, oh my God, I gotta go here, gotta go there. I never had a bucket list. So
It just happened.
it just came, and we had 13 years of his platonic friendship.
Yep, the
He was
dogs
a
are
perfect
bowing.
gentleman.
Yeah, he was a good guy. Okay, so now between 70 years old and 80 years old, there were a lot of changes, I know, for you, because you had lived at Cali Mayor for how long?
I lived there 26 years, and it was pretty hard to get me out of there.
Yes.
But Kathy won out, and I moved to Huntington Beach to take care of 2 more grandchildren, Carly and Kelly. And that turned out to be so fun. Now I'm older, I'm enjoying it so much because it'd be better than being alone. Just I did live alone, but I wasn't alone. I had family, some kind of family every day, taking care of the kids and networking and all this stuff.
So now between your 80th year and your 90th, what are some things that stand out?
Well, I was still with Carly and Kelly, and I'd take Carly to soccer practice and I'd pick her up or whatever. And I think I did that one season with Kelly, but she didn't care much about soccer. She'd rather dance. So it was fun. I was 87 years old when I finally stopped watching children. And it's weird because way back when I was in my 60s, I told Chris and Deb both, are you going to start having children? Because I'll be too old to babysit. Little did I know I would still be doing it at 87 years old.
Well, I can speak on behalf of all the siblings on just what a blessing it was to be able to have our mom watch our kids, because you're an amazing parent. And all of our kids benefited from being able to spend quality time with you.
It was the best job I ever had.
Well, you're very, very good at it. So now we'll wrap it up here. We're at the 90 to 100. So you've had a lot of change here in this last year. How's that all been for you?
Well, I moved to Westminster to live with Kathy and Kelly. It took about 3 days to adjust because it's a resort. What can you ask for? Most people that move in with their family get one little room. I have 2 rooms and a bath and kitchen, the whole thing at my disposal. And I use every single room. So it's been wonderful. But now we're into the point of coronavirus. So we are all indoors, and it's a horrible thing that's come over the whole globe.
Okay, well, that pretty much wraps up my segment of this interview, and I want to thank you for going through all the decades, all the chapters. There's been many, and we appreciate you doing this because you are a wise sage, and we love hearing about your life, the good, the bad, and the ugly, but you are so loved by everybody, so we'll be watching this video, I know, many times over and over and over. So,
well, thank you for doing it. And now my brain is tired, so I can go take a nap.
love you, Mom.